Hi, this is the voice of Heidie Calero with another fascinating economic capsule regarding, this time, Puerto Rico's labor market failure. And this is an interesting topic because after all, after COVID-19, we've been shut down as of March 15, 2020. Then the economy started opening again. And so we are looking at, have we really recovered? And let's look at a theory. It's an old theory, but still it has some reasoning behind it. And this graph depicts the Phillips curve in Puerto Rico, which relates inflation, which is going to be in the consumer price index, increases in the vertical axis of this graph, and in the horizontal axis is the rate of unemployment. And so the theory said that if there is high inflation, you should look at lower unemployment. Why? Because the economy is such great growth that people are demanding more goods and services, and so if they're chasing more goods and services than production can really produce rapidly for them, inflation is going to rise. So it is correlated with economic growth of the economy. On the other hand, if inflation is down, then unemployment will rise. Why? Again, because the economy would not be growing at the same pace as depicted by this growth in demand. This correlation in Puerto Rico is 80%, and it's an inverse relationship, which validates some of the reasoning behind the Phillips curve. And as you can see there, the trend is inverse. So as inflation rises, the unemployment is lower. And right now we have another instrument, which is the equation that you see there, which gives us an R square of 63%. So again, the sign is correct. It's an inverse relationship, and it explains almost 64% of all that variation in terms of inflation and unemployment. So moving forward, let's look at what's happening in the labor market in Puerto Rico. And this next graph depicts for you the employment by sectors, and the columns that you see there from Q1 2020, it's on a quarterly basis, through Q3 2022. Those columns are manufacturing jobs. And look, there is a horizontal line which says that the index that we have prepared, we divided all the quarterly jobs in different sectors by their Q1 2020, which is just before the pandemic of COVID-19, to see if they have recovered and we have regained levels before the pandemic. We see that manufacturing is 96 of that index. So it's 4% below that index. It has not recovered. But let's look at other sectors here. Let's look at the blue sector, which is construction. It's the blue line, and that blue line tells us that it has like 14% above, 24% above the index of 2020, the first quarter, that the other sectors, which are retail trade as well as government, they have recovered, as well as others. So it seems that the other sectors have recovered because they are above the index of 100, and they are above that horizontal line, which I depict for you in this graph. And again, the message is manufacturing seems to have skipped recovery. But on the other hand, let's look at this third graph here, and that's the increase in self-employed. With the pandemic, many people started looking at either virtual conferences and virtual work, and so they grew accustomed to that. If now their employer did not offer that flexibility again, they started looking for other ways to gain their income. And so we are seeing here the increase in self-employed. Again, the index is Q2 of 2020, and it's based on February of 2020, just before the pandemic. And we divided all these self-employed with over that number, and whatever is above that horizontal line is above the index. So we see that as of October 2022, the last figure that we have, it's 19% above what it was in Q2 of 2020. So tremendous recovery there in terms of self-employed. People have started looking for new jobs. It's a new paradigm in the labor market, and people are looking for flexibility. And so if those employers really want to regain those employees, they will have to look at new ways of attracting them. The next graph, again, sort of doesn't validate what we started with this theory of the Phillips curve, because even though we have high inflation in Puerto Rico, like 6.6% as of October, we do not see the economic activity index, which we are depicting here, published by the Puerto Rico Development Bank. It has been on a downward trend since May of 2021. It's now anything below that horizontal black line is negative, and right now that index is negative 1%. So economic activity has not recovered. Even though we have high inflation, we should see this growth in the economy. It's not happening. The next graph is the PMI, that's the Purchasing Manufacturers Index, which again, it's the index which has different indicators, not only the jobs in manufacturing, and as we saw before, it has not recovered, but now the PMI is also in negative territory, as you see there. Anything below that black horizontal line, it's negative 5% as of September of 2022. So manufacturing has not recovered. The economic activity index says that the economy has not accelerated, even though we have high inflation. Of course, high inflation is not just attributable to the increase in demand here in Puerto Rico. Remember, we are an island, so most of what we are importing comes from outside Puerto Rico. And we've seen the Ukraine-Russia war. We've seen the increase in the price of oil. Puerto Rico is so small, it will not affect those prices, but those prices will impact our inflation. So take with a grain of salt the Phillips curve. But notwithstanding, as I said before, it has some reasoning behind this madness of this theory. And finally, the last graph that we are depicting here is what is happening with weekly wages vis-a-vis the inflation. And as we see here in Q2 of 2022, the increase in the consumer price index, the measure of inflation, was 6.6%. And the orange line is the weekly wages. How much have they increased? And they have increased only 5.3%. So inflation has accelerated more than the increase in wages, which means that in real terms, wages are lower than inflation. So our purchasing power has declined. So really, it's the story is of Puerto Rico's not only labor market failure, it's the economic development failure in Puerto Rico, the failure of this administration as well as prior administrations to really have fiscal discipline, to not have to go into bankruptcy, that it has not really implemented an economic plan so that this economy will grow faster than just that meager 0.1% or 0.2 or the negative rates of real growth that we have seen. Puerto Rico needs not a failure, it needs successes. If you liked our economic capsule, don't forget that this is a service of Puerto Rico Economic Pulse. If you like, subscribe to the voice of Heidie Calero in YouTube, and those capsules that you like, give us a thumbs up, and don't forget that the economy is all of us. Our advice to you is that if follow your passion, follow your dream. If you are engaged in self-employment, continue with that. Follow it, because do not rely on just the government to give you the rescue. We cannot expect that. So until then, see you.